Before I get into the actual list, I would like to have honorable mentions, a bunch of fusions that don't do really anything of note, like Jade or Fluorite, but I'm still going to rank them on the screen so you can know my opinion on them. At the bottom, I have the 3 Ruby Fusion because they're pretty basic and they don't really do anything impressive enough to warrant being higher on the list. Above them, controversially, I have Garnet. Now, don't get me wrong, for a normal character, Garnet is pretty strong. She's probably the second strongest out of the crystal gems, behind Steven. And Lapis if you count her in. The problem with that is the fact that she's a fusion. And she's a fusion of a ruby, a simple gem, and sapphire, a non-combat gem. Opal, who I have above her, is actually even shown to be stronger, not only because they use her to shoot at Jasper's ship, which they wouldn't use her if Garnet was strong enough, but also in Know Your Fusion, it's quite literally depicted the ranking of strength between those characters. And the only reason Stevani is not lower than Garnet is because later on, Steven becomes so powerful that his fusions power up with him as well. At about the same tier as Opal, I have the Mega Pearl, which instead of being a combination of pearl and amethyst is a combination of pearl and volleyball. The reason why she's here is because she's basically the same as Opal, however, volleyball is arguably stronger than amethyst, as pearl is already stronger than amethyst. So you could argue it's stronger than Opal, or you could argue that the experience in combat of amethyst adds to Opal to a higher extent than to Mega Pearl, making her stronger. It's really a debate between who do you personally believe is more powerful. And somewhere within the same tier should be Blue Azurite, Steg, and Topaz, for the following reasons. Blue Azurite is able to fight Steven from future, who is able to battle Jasper even before he goes pink, and individually Aquamarine even is kind of able to react to Pink Steven, which is pretty impressive. At the same time, Topaz is shown to be way stronger than Garnet, being able to just grab her and throw her around, showing the superiority in strength. And Steg's weird ability works on Opal, and in theory, it could have been used in combats to just poof them or something. So I think within this same tier are those characters which seem to be somewhere at the same level of Garnet, Opal, or slightly stronger perhaps. Zebra Jasper should be logically stronger than Jasper, and at the very least it should be as strong as Jasper and one of those corrupted monsters together. And given that those guys individually are as strong as Season 3 Steven and Connie, and can even put up a fight against Amethyst, adding Jasper to that is actually pretty nice in terms of strength. And it's especially impressive if you believe that when gems fuse, it's more than an addition and it's closer to a multiplier or something. Because you have Jasper, who's at the same level as Garnet, if not stronger, and someone who's also stronger than Pearl and Amethyst and Steven, fused with a monster about at the level of Steven at the time. The 5 Ruby fusion is here because of just how strong a 5 fusion person should be. Like, yes, individually, rubies are not that strong. However, when you, for example, combine 2 small gems like Ruby and Sapphire, you get a relatively stronger character. Even when you think about Alexandrite, it's technically formed from a non-combatant, a servant, an overcooked warrior, and a foot soldier. And we know how strong that is. So think about 4 foot soldiers together, and they should be strong enough to be here on the list. And this is especially true because we literally see that the crystal gems, individually at least, are threatened by them. They actually form Sardonyx in order to defeat them. And if they didn't think they needed Sardonyx, they wouldn't have brought her in to beat them. And even then, she doesn't beat them conventionally. She just hits them with a hammer real hard and then they go into space. Speaking of which, Sardonyx and Sugilite should be at about this tier. It's really up to you who you think is stronger, because at the end of the day, they're both fusions of 3 crystal gems. If you think Sugilite is stronger because she's probably physically stronger, then yeah, go for it. But if you think that she's at a disadvantage due to the fact that she kind of lost to Pearl by herself due to Pearl's more tactical side, then you would very easily be able to argue that Sardonyx is able to create a tactic to defeat Sugilite even if Sugilite is stronger physically. Even then, that's arguable. You could very easily argue that Sardonyx herself is pretty much a match physically, as the difference between Pearl and Amethyst is small if non-existent. Above that, I have Stevonnie, only due to the fact that Steven, by the end of the series, is so powerful that any fusion he's in is going to be very strong. I mean, think about it. As far as Season 3, Stevonnie was already capable of defeating someone like Jasper, who was stronger than Pearl, was absolutely destroying Amethyst at every encounter, and was even on par, if not slightly stronger than Garnet. So you take a way stronger Steven from later on in future, where he can go toe-to-toe with Jasper by himself, where he's stronger than the rest of the crystal gems by himself, where he has all these insane powers, and you add all of that to a Connie that herself, by the end of the series, is able to go toe-to-toe with a mind control Pearl. By the end of the original series, both Steven and Connie are on par with the rest of the crystal gems, if not stronger in Steven's case, and Stevonnie should be no different. And the next 3 placements on the list reflect that, because we have Smoky Quartz, Rainbow Quartz, and Sunstone. Smoky was not only stronger than Jasper, which makes her on par with Stevonnie, but she was already stronger than a Jasper fusion when she was introduced, meaning that already she seems to be above Stevonnie's power, at least in Season 3. And as of future, we see that Steven's power of moving so fast that everyone seems to be moving in slow motion translates to her, which gives her a huge advantage compared to everyone else. Actually, it might be the case that Rainbow Quartz is weaker than Smoky Quartz, because while Rainbow Quartz has Pearl in it, who is, in my opinion, stronger than Amethyst, therefore, by that logic, the fusion should be stronger than Smoky, we actually see Smoky use the super speed ability, which in my opinion gives her a huge advantage. She could basically be faster than almost anyone in the series, excluding like Steven himself. So all the Steven fusions except Obsidian are neck and neck for me, with Sunstone only being at the top because of her composition. She's composed of not only Steven from future, but also Garnet, who's stronger than Amethyst or Pearl. She's not only strong enough that she's able to catch the Diamond Mech's foot and overpower it, which is an insane feat. It's something Obsidian has struggled with, and Sunstone was just able to do. But also, there's the idea of it being a 4th wall breaker, which gives her abilities I think the other fusions don't have. On a good day, depending on who's writing the episode, I could very well see Smoky Quartz or Sunstone being able to defeat almost anyone on this list, except number 1 probably. Next I have Alexandrite and Malachite. And yes, Malachite above. Why is she above when she lost? Well, because she didn't actually lose. If you remember the fight, and people keep saying that she lost, but she literally won, and then Steven had to get his army of watermelons to distract Malachite in order for Alexandrite to break free and then attack her. Not only that, but while they were fighting, Lapis was also fighting Jasper within the fusion. So in this case, Malachite was attacked by Alexandrite, by Watermelon Steven distracting her from winning, and then she was fighting half of herself. That is insane. Imagine if the Watermelon Stevens were not there. Imagine if Lapis cooperated with Jasper and put her whole strength into it, and imagine if it was just a 1v1. It would have been a massacre. Alexandrite barely got to win with all those favorable conditions. It's pretty obvious to me that Malachite would have beat Alexandrite. However, being fusions of the 3 crystal gems is strong enough for me to put them above individual fusions of 2 people like Rainbow, like Smokey, even though Steven is not in them. And that's mostly because, for example, Lapis, who's half of Malachite, is also able to temporarily restrain diamonds and temporarily restrain Monster Steven, which shows you how powerful she is and how powerful Malachite is by extension. Therefore, I think Alexandrite being able to fight her is actually very, very impressive. And I just don't think we've seen anything from Sunstone, Rainbow Quartz, Smoky Quartz on the level of being able to temporarily fight diamonds or like Monster Steven or anything of the sorts. Above Malachite, I have Obsidian. Why? Because she's a fusion of all the crystal gems and all the characters that form Alexandrite, who is able to fight Malachite, but also we add Steven. And imagine especially if they formed Obsidian in future when Steven's powers were on crack. It would have been a massacre. I feel like at that point they could have probably beat the diamonds, beat the diamond mech, destroyed the cluster, destroyed the planet. They would have done whatever the hell they wanted. They would have been invincible. But obviously they haven't. But just in theory, Obsidian is strong enough to fight the diamond mech, which is strong enough to fight the partially flown cluster. And just logically, a fusion that adds Steven to Alexandrite should be stronger than Alexandrite, should be stronger than Malachite, and should be stronger than any individual Steven has with the rest of the crystal gems or with Connie. It's just common sense. She's one of the strongest characters in the series. Now, number 2 is actually one that nobody will see coming because it's from a game. And I'm talking about the Prism fusion. The fusion from the final game in the Light trilogy. You might ask, what the hell does that mean? Where does this come from? How strong is it? Well, within the game, it's the final boss is the combination of 3 prisms. Each individual prisms is able to create armies of gems that can fight the crystal gems. And then the prisms themselves can fight Alexandrite. And the Prism fusion can fight Alexandrite. Actually, you can form Obsidian in the game to fight this fusion and it doesn't absolutely destroy it, which to me shows that, to some extent at least, this Prism is able to take on the crystal gems even if they form Obsidian. But I understand if people don't want to take that in consideration. However, I will say that the damage and attacks and everything in this game are based on the strength of the character. Lapis is way stronger than the rest of the crystal gems, and you could tell by the amount of damage she does, right? It's built into the characters how much power they can produce. So in this case, Obsidian is not strong enough to beat her, at least not easily. And at number 1 we have the cluster. Why? Well, let me tell you, the cluster can fight the diamond ship that is able to fight Obsidian. That's pretty impressive. Is able to restrain Monster Steven while partially formed. And at full power, if it really wanted to, if it really wanted to erupt, the cluster could just destroy the planet. It could expand and become larger than the planet. It's literally a combination of shards from millions of gems. Logically speaking, it makes sense that it's so strong. And logically speaking, if it's big enough and strong enough to destroy the planet, then it should be above all those other characters. And just in general, it's just the strongest. It's literally its formed hand that's not even the full thing is already top tier in the universe. You can only imagine one that's strong enough to be bigger than the planet. So that's about it. That was the ranking of fusions. And in my opinion, it's probably the most accurate. Even though, believe it or not, I didn't even write a script for this. It's off the top of my head. And probably is gonna be reflective in the video itself because it's less organized. But it is what it is. Thank you.